So tell me about the Canadian government and arts grants.
Well, that really depends what kind of arts grants you're talking about.
Okay, well, you may know that I recently started playing all those Christine Love visual novels, and I started following her on Twitter.
Yep.
So I think yesterday she tweeted a picture of a grant application she's writing for presumably asking the Canadian government for money for her next game, which she says is based on Persona. And you know, I love Persona.
Yep.
I love Christine Love's writing. So
that's right.
I want to get super excited about this, but I don't know anything about Canadian art grants. Is this like 1 in a million? Is it like
No.
Is it $10? Like
no, actually, like Canadian arts grants are pretty common, believe it or not. One of the things that the Canadian government does to try and make sure that the Canadian identity is markedly distinct from the American one is basically ensure a certain percentage of culture that goes on in our like quote unquote broadcast systems. And I know that's weird to say that about a video game, the internet, but it wraps in. It has to be kind of Canadian content. Now that usually kind of it basically makes two demands of purveyors of culture and creators of culture. Where basically purveyors of culture need to ensure that, like Canadian television stations, radio shows, and stuff like that, need to ensure that there's a certain amount of Canadian created content in their pocket on the air. Now, that doesn't always necessarily mean that they have the wherewithal to create or facilitate the creation of that content. So, like, I mean, it's Canadian television shows, yeah, because we'll have, like, you know, CTV, which is a Canadian network, or, like, Global is a Canadian network. You know, basically it means that of all the programming hours in the day, a certain percentage needs to be a Canadian, and occasionally these companies will shell out, like, you know, a budget to make a Canadian television show that fulfills all these requirements. But when it comes to a lot of other Canadian art, like Canadian music, Canadian theater, you know, we have an entire portion of the government. They basically call him, I think he's the Heritage Office, the Heritage Minister, that basically oversees the facilitation of the creation of Canadian art. So, like, almost every single successful Canadian artist, successful or not, Canadian artist has at some point in time applied for a grant. It's a pretty regular procedure when you're trying to be a Canadian musician or a Canadian filmmaker, or, you know, something like that. So there's a pretty decent chance that she might qualify for one. I think it might depend on the content, unfortunately, of her proposed project at this point in time, because the government that we have that's in power right now in Canada, well, I guess it depends on whether or not she's going on a provincial scale or a federal scale, because there's a slight difference between the two, but because she's Vancouver based, isn't she? She's West Coast, is that right?
All Canada is one thing to me. I will look it up if.
Okay, well, it doesn't matter one way or another. If it's going all the way to the federal level, the government that we have installed in the federal government right now is, you know, by Canadian standards, pretty right wing.
It says here Toronto. I don't know where that is.
Okay, that'll be Ontario then. So I think the provincial government in Toronto is actually pretty socially liberal at this point in time. So if she's applying for a provincial grant, she might have a pretty good chance, particularly, you know, I don't think there's a lot of video game studios in Toronto at this point in time. I might be mistaken. It's been years since I've been to Toronto personally. So, but yeah, no, it's a regular thing. It happens. So she's got a pretty decent chance, I think. And if not, she's probably just going to keep filling out grant forms until, you know, she gets one. Basically, that's kind of the way it goes, the way it works. You just keep applying for grants until you get a grant, and then, you know, you can, like, take time off or quit the job that you currently have and do what you want to do.
See, in America, that's not how things happen.
Oh, I realize that. I know. It's essentially it's trying to at least manipulate the culture in some way that we don't just see ourselves as Americans that have different colored underwear or whatever.
Yeah, I hear the Canadian underwear laws are pretty strict.
Very strict, really stringent.
I have no idea what we're talking about. Yusuf hasn't answered me. It's 3 o'clock in the morning there, so I don't know what he was thinking.
I don't know either. He's a nut bar, is what he is.
So did you? I don't want to linger on it during the actual episode. Did you hear the latest X-Bone stuff?
The past week has been a rough ride for people trying to discern complete truth from speculation. And I mean, this is not me just talking about what other press sites are reporting, but what Microsoft itself is actually telling people. So what's the state right now?
Well, I mean, it's a whole huge clusterfuck. Like, the vice president of Microsoft said one thing, their Twitter account for their Xbox support said another thing, and then the Major Nelson said a different thing. And then all these anonymous trusted sources for Kotaku and Polygon and Game Informer and Joystick and Destructoid, they all have separate stories and they all conflict. So basically, the latest is that none of this, like the hardware is static, but all the policies are still in flux, presumably based on feedback. Like the theory out there right now is that they're actually like strategically leaking this stuff to see if they can get away with it.
Well, that was what I said that on my Twitter feed on the weekend. I said, do you think that Microsoft is actually doing this? Like, they're feeding random information out as a means of gathering market research data?
I mean, we have no way to confirm that, but what I'm hearing now is that Sony is also very carefully watching this to see if they can get away with it, and basically using Microsoft as like a shield. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, smart move.
So...
And considering that none of this stuff is hardware, it could change on day -2.
No, I mean they could change it post-launch. They could say, no, everyone, it's a free open, everyone's invited, and then after it'd be like firmware update, fuck you guys.
But I mean, don't you think that that's going to damage off-the-shelf launch date sales? Don't you think that would damage, at least, anyways?
It should. Whether or not it would is a different thing entirely, because, as I said before, people are stupid.
I keep forgetting about that.
The average consumer is not informed and won't stick up for his or herself. Also,
I don't even talk to people. I don't talk to people anymore, so it's like, I have this weird image in the back of my head that everybody over the past 2 years has gotten more sensible, and it's really not like that at all, is it?
No, I mean... Maybe in other parts of the country. I'm from the rural South. I go outside and it's everywhere is the 4 a.m. Walmart crowd.
Wow.
Everywhere is that always.
Yusuf, good to see you. How you doing?
I'm all right, Johnny. How are you?
I'm okay. I was just telling Austin that I went furniture shopping on the weekend and I bought a sofa bed.
Did it come with additional DLC?
I think Occupant is sold separately.
They always get you with that.
Yeah. So, so at this point in time, it's just the sofa bed. If anybody wants to sleep in it, that's going to cost me extra.
Is Yusuf whispering? Was that just me?
Well, I'm keeping my voice down a little bit because my other half is sleeping upstairs, and while I love computer games, I fear the wrath of God.
Okay, because it would probably be hard to listen to this if we whispered the whole time.
Why are you whispering?
I just want to fit in. I want to be liked.
But when he was whispering before, he was the minority. We were turncoat. You just don't want to be on my side.
I just think it makes for better radio when me and Johnny are going at each other. Like, no one wants to listen to us agree. That's kind of boring. It's more fun if I'm yelling at him.
It's weird though, because we do actually spend quite a lot of our time agreeing on stuff.
Yeah.
When it actually comes down to the nitty-gritty. But then for some reason or another, it's a better show when we disagree about things.
Most of our squabbles come down to individual preference on certain games. It's not like any big sweeping issues where we differ.
No, I think we're pretty much on the same page when it comes to stabbing.
just stabbing in general.
Just stabbing.
That's why I like having Taylor on, because he's wrong about everything.
Almost as a rule.
He tries really hard.
I think he just disagrees with you for the sake of disagreeing with you.
Yeah, that's Sean.
Well, yeah. But I think Sean was raised that way. Anyway.
You mean raised just to be contrary?
Yes. There was a social experiment gone wrong.
Sean has escaped the labs, the Umbrella Labs.
He liked Kingdom Hearts and then escaped, and they've regressed it ever since.
Kingdom Hearts isn't bad. It's just not particularly good storytelling. I do not understand why people are not capable of admitting things they like have flaws. It's okay to like Kingdom Hearts and admit its story is a bit of bullshit. Like, I like a lot of things that are terrible. It's okay.
If I need 5 spin-off games to understand a 2-game story, I don't know what's going on.
You done fucked up, son.
So have you been watching Arrested Development, Yusuf?
I haven't, but I have just discovered it's on Netflix in the UK now, so I will be watching it.
Yeah.
I have no idea what it is, other than you keep going on about it.
You haven't seen, like, any Arrested Development yet?
Nope.
Oh, good grief. Oh, my... Oh. For shame. But, well, I mean, I guess it's okay, really, but you should watch it. I mean, it's hilarious. I think it's the funniest television show I've ever seen, personally. And, you know, I think you and I have reasonably similar tastes when it comes to media, judging how much you appreciate Archer.
Yes. Well, Archer's pure genius.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll give it a watch. See what it's like. I've got, what's the other? Breaking Bad I've never watched either. So. That's
a pretty amazing show. But, like, everybody talks it up as being, like, a pretty amazing show.
And you've been saying Hannibal's pretty good as well.
I'm really enjoying Hannibal. I'm kind of surprised at actually how good it is. But yeah, you should sit down and watch Arrested Development. I happen to think it's probably the funniest television show I've seen.
Just full stop.
Full stop. Funniest television show I've seen.
Just full stop.
Full stop.
Okay. Recommendation. Understood.
Yeah.
You think Arrested Development's the funniest show ever?
I think it's the funniest show ever.
Huh.
I mean, at least for myself. I know that there's a lot of people that it kind of like it goes over their heads, or if you have the misfortune of like walking in and your first experience with Arrested Development is like 7 or 8 episodes in, even at that point in time, you're lost. That's it. You won't understand this show. It will not affect you. You know, it requires attention right from the beginning. You know, you need to be familiar with the situation. You need to be familiar with the characters. And you have to have a pretty good memory as well, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's written more like a drama in that there are, like, relevant plot details that carry over from, like, season to season.
Yeah. It requires an eye. You know, like there are little jokes that kind of pass you by. Like I watched an episode with a friend many years ago when it was still on TV, and it was the one where Tobias Funke was describing that he was the first analyst and therapist that the American medical system has ever seen, and he passes a card to someone that says analrapist.
Yeah. I made that joke in a post recently.
And I laughed, you know, like, of course, but it took my friend, like, a minute to get that one. Like, there's a lot of slow burner jokes. There are, because, I like how it manages to, it rewards viewer loyalty in the first place, which I think is great, because it's sort of like, you, as a viewer, you feel like you're kind of part of something. You know, like there are little inside jokes where it's like, hey, if you've been here since the beginning, then you're going to get this. And that, like, rewarding viewer loyalty is something that I don't think enough television shows really engage in.
Well, no, because they have to be welcoming to new people every episode.
Exactly. And I you know, as much as that might be good for business, it's bad for the art form.
Perhaps they should start giving out achievements for it.
Topical. It may or may not be the funniest show of all time. I think it bears mentioning. If you're going to be like, these are the top 5 funniest shows of all time, I think Arrested Development's definitely in there, you know, but...
Yeah, maybe it's top 5 or 10.
But, you know, like, there comes a certain point in time where you start talking about, I guess, personal preference over the actual technique of writing good comedy. I think it excels technically at good comedy. I think the cast is excellent, the timing is fantastic, the writing is off the board fantastic, but yeah, I think that there's a lot of humor that would definitely not. It can be quite dry at times.
Yeah, it's not a laugh track comedy.
Yeah, and I mean those are my favorite kinds. But
yeah.
I think it's. I mean, what would you say? What would you say is the funniest television show?
Because I think you got to think like quality versus quantity. Because I off the top of my head, I'm thinking something like that has like 1 million episodes, like South Park would.
Is there South Park or something?
Yeah, or on the other side of the scale, you have like Monty Python's Flying Circus.
Yeah.
Which is a lot funnier in smaller amounts. And then you got, I'm trying to think, I don't know, like Seinfeld, Futurama.
Yeah, I could see them.
That's all that comes to mind right off the top of my head. But
see, South Park and Monty Python, I would say, definitely have some of the funniest moments on TV. But because of their formats, I find that they're inconsistent.
There's a lot of weak Monty Python that everybody forgets about.
Yeah, and there's a lot of weak South Park as well. Like when they hit it bang on, they nail it.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said for consistency, and I think that's something that Arrested Development has. I think that there's a consistency to it.
That's true. I guess it's a question of we have to do you deduct points for bad episodes or bad jokes, or do you just pile all the good ones?
Well, in an episode-to-episode fight, I'm not sure that Arrested Development would win. But as a complete product, I think it's definitely a contender.
Did you see on Twitter linking to apparently on YouTube it recommends like gay porn if you watch our podcasts?
Yeah, did you not see the my response to that?
I think I did. I'm bringing it up more for people who are listening to this. Obviously.
Yeah. You see, I was genuinely insulted that every single one of our podcasts had close to about 1,400 views or something like that. And then it was like bisexual boys suck on each other after soccer practice, and it's like 9,000 views. And I was like, what the fuck? I guess we better gay it up hard today.
Well, the last episode got way more, presumably because of Xbone. I don't know if it was because people just wanted to hear about the Xbox or because maybe it was like way more entertaining than usual because I flipped the fuck out. You
did flip right the fuck out.
I assume that people enjoyed that. I can never tell.
I think it's pretty funny how when you flip right the fuck out, people are like super interested, but when I flip right the fuck out, they're like, hey, that's just Johnny.
And the guy that tweeted at us, I just looked on his Tumblr. Mm-hmm. He says under it, seriously, I really recommend the BT podcast. I started listening because of Leon, but I stayed because of those two little shits.
That's us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another stirring and historically accurate episode of Ye Old Timey Video Game Podcast. Yes, on this podcast we actually talk about video games, but only in a manner similar to that of people writing 17th and 18th century letters to each other from countryside plantations in pastoral settings. So, today we will begin. My dear Austin Yorsky, spring is waning, and the cotton in the air is settling to the ground and taking root, which says to me that indeed it soon be time for E3. Now, Microsoft has said that they are going to show their stable of games to all the lords and ladies who come from many miles around to the state of California, which you may realize was just ratified by the United States Congress. Many of us here down at my plantation are hoping very much that Microsoft comes to the table with a strong stable of brand new intellectual properties like they've been alluding to. But, unfortunately, we cannot as of yet acknowledge the fact that all of these new intellectual properties may in fact be AAA titles. Now, Ma, down at the cottage on the creek, has said to me, son, you've been fooled by them before. maybe you had better hold off and reserve your judgment for when all the facts is laid out before you like a fine picnic spread on a July afternoon. And then you may sip of them informations like a nice chilled mint julep on your porch in a rocking chair, and ruminate on the flavors of these announcements so that you and your colleagues may come to a reasonable conclusion as to the strength of Microsoft's proposals to entertain y'all with the video games. Regards, your friend and compatriot, Sir Colonel William Johnny Maloney.
I don't know if you realize this, Colonel Maloney, but in the 17th century, Florida was mostly swampland, and I don't think that the Pony Express would get your letter to me in any kind of reasonable amount of time, so we're just going to assume I was eaten by an alligator.
But that wasn't the point. I mean, the point is not to, like, historically reenact you being eaten by an alligator and not getting my post. The point is...
You said it was historically accurate.
Yes, historically accurate.
Dear Jonathan, your accent is most upsetting. I have no idea where you're from, what year you're in. How are the slaves?
To Austin. You know very well that as a Canadian I own no slaves, much to my chagrin.
Oh no.
Perhaps our friend from across the Atlantic pond, Mr. Yusuf Alshika, would like to weigh in on this discussion. Yours truly, your friend and compatriot, Sir General William Forsyth Johnny Maloney II and a half.
Dear compatriots, I've been in this podcast all of 5 minutes, and the topic of slavery has already come up. I feel slightly disconcerted, as I have just applied for a job in the police force, and don't think this is the public image I need to be giving out. Don't contact me again. Yusuf.
Dear podcast listeners, I am sorry for bringing the topic of slavery up, but I did it only in defense to Austin Yorsky's accusation that I already own slaves. I do not own any slaves, and despite the fact that I may joke about enjoying having slaves around, I would not force any man or woman or even child, unless they was particularly obnoxious, to do any of my instructions unless I was willing to pay them a fair wage for it. My apologies. Yours sincerely, Admiral Johnny Rendleton Smythe Maloney II, +2.
Wait, what year was this supposed to take place in?
I don't know, man. What do I look like? A fucking almanac?
I was just going to say, because I'm pretty sure Yusuf's supposed to invade us soon.
No. Yusuf doesn't invade America. The British found America.
I'm confused about the timeline. I figured that we were already here, because you were talking about the cotton, and then we're just tilling the land, and then he's going to come over here and start some shit.
No.
No?
No.
How
America was like a British colony.
No, I'm aware. I thought we were. This is post-Revolutionary War.
So yeah,
pre-Civil War. That's where I thought we were.
Pre-Civil, yeah. Okay, all right, maybe that sounds about right.
Are we past 1812?
I guess.
Okay, so then Yusuf and I we're good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Wow.
Is this the worst intro we've ever done?
It's the longest.
I know, there was the one time where you read the first chapter of Lolita.
In the voice of a WWE wrestler.
Yeah, that was an episode we did.
There was also the dictionary.
I feel like we stopped you before you got too far in that one.
It's true, you did, but that might be a worse one. Is that a worse one?
I don't know. They're all pretty terrible. So
we'll have a top 10 worst intros podcast at some point.
We should do like the worst of the BT podcast, and I should just edit all of the Holocaust jokes together back to back to back.
Would you really be able to tell that from just like any given regular edition of the podcast? I happen to think that we manage a consistent standard of horribleness.
Well, okay, let's be real. I would just edit the video game talk out of every episode and then string the remaining stuff together.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense.
Speaking of video games, it's Memorial Day, so not a lot of news happened, but some did. You guys want to talk about it?
Yeah, right.
If we must.
I'm sorry.
Always bringing us down, Yoski.
Yeah, you and your focus on excellence in programming.
I focus on excellence of programming. None of us would be here. I would get who are actually qualified to helm this.
I'm marginally qualified.
I am not.
I have a little bit of training, at least in improvisational theater and whatnot, so I can speak properly, at least.
I'm not fit for public speaking. Editing that last episode, it's become really clear to me that I say the F word way too much.
When I get carried away, I have a tendency to throw likes and you-knows into sentences quite frequently.
People are still listening.
Yeah, it's true. In fact, more people than when we started with. Although I think a certain number of them very possibly listening in the same way that people slow down when they pass a car crash.
just to look at the remains.
Just to look at the mess and be a little... absorb that. Just kind of say to themselves, that could have been me.
I like to think that they all want to be able to say that they listened to the episode that got us kicked off Channel Awesome.
Because you just know that as soon as that episode goes up, it will come down right afterwards. Yeah.
And then people are like, oh, the lost episode, where were you?
And then years from now, internet archaeologists will be digging through, like, Wayback Machine or something along those lines, and someone will discover it. And at last, the lost episode of the BT podcast. And it'll probably be the most normal thing that we've ever done. It'll start, and I will probably just say, hey, welcome to the BT podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Maloney. This is my co-host, Austin Norski. We're here to talk about video games. So...
Well, I mean, why would that get us kicked off? I think we'd have to go so over the top heinous that it would be like the producers.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we wouldn't get there. All I'm saying is at a glance, at a testing the waters, dipping your toe in, it would be like very much, wow, this is actually really, really tame. And then there would just be this one thing like, in the middle of the podcast, like an obelisk of bad taste and horror and just the worst thing you've ever heard anybody on the internet say.
It's like a Trojan horse, right?
Yeah.
You start the file, and it's just like, oh, video games, and then all of a sudden it's a fuck circus. You have no idea.
That's the thing. I think the way that we begin the podcast and just generally our dynamic has a tendency to chase people away from people who would normally be offended by the things that we like to talk about on the podcast. They stay away. And if we had like a normal sounding podcast, they might be coerced.
Oh, so
listening a little longer.
So the normies aren't getting to the actual gritty content?
I'm not sure they are.
Okay.
It's all going to go horribly wrong when someone's listening and going, oh, I was really looking forward to the historical reenactment of 1970s letters. What's going on here then?
Yeah. So that's that. I think that might happen. That's the setup. So when I come around and I'm just behaving as normal as anybody might when they're just talking to some friends who like to wear Crocs and are fond of corduroy, and they're very concerned about how the markets did that day, that is your warning bell. That's the fire alarm. That's the canary in the mine shaft keeling over dead. When I come into this thing, and I'm talking like I wear beige or brown shorts, run.
It occurs to me, did we actually introduce Yusuf in any kind of appreciable way, or we just...
I did. I threw him in there to one of the letters, but...
I didn't know.
If you would prefer to do it in a slightly more officious capacity with less exaggerated accent and strange, determinate historical location...
I don't give a shit. This is Yusuf. He gave God of War 3.
I did.
God of War Ascension.
He gave Halo 4 a 5?
I think so, something like that.
I'm just going to start bringing up all your controversial reviews.
The last time I was on the podcast, all I remember is that dingoes ate my baby, and that is it. I think that's the only way to remember these podcasts. It's just, you can't remember what games you were talking about.
Yeah.
Definitely remember the wrong things that I was involved in saying.
Yeah, the games never define the episodes. It's the jokes.
So. You call them jokes. That's a strong word.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that implies that there's like a setup and a punchline, and that they're in any way structured.
Surrealist tangents. That's how I like to define them. It's like Dadaist stand-up comedy, is what it is.
But yes, I give bad scores to things that people like, because I hate the world and think it should ban.
I prefer to think of it, Yusuf, as you having exacting standards. And like I believe that a number of people who come to Blistered Thumbs, not like the core community. I believe the core community has a pretty good idea of what we're about, but I think a lot of people get linked to our reviews and misunderstand our personal, our site-based purpose for scoring games.
Our grading system pisses some people off.
Well, we're not trying to make judgments about people who like games. I mean, because we rate Halo, what was it? Halo 3, was it? Was it Halo 4? Was it Halo 4? Sorry, Halo 4. Like Halo 4 of 5. That doesn't mean that we're saying Halo 5 was a bit disappointing, and we are therefore disappointed in anybody who likes Halo 5.
Especially Halo 4.
Because when you open up the scale from 0 to 10, where 10 is a work of absolute and total perfection, and 0 is unplayable, you can have games that are good and that are fun that exist in this middle range. I would even argue that games that are scored 4s and 5s are perfectly playable, but just a little disappointing.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I've said multiple times that EDF 2017 is one of my favourite games ever, but it's a 3 out of 10 game.
Yeah.
It's an awful game.
Yeah. If I was like making a rating system from scratch, you'd probably pare it down more to like, I don't know, maybe out of 5, maybe out of 3, just like not worth your time, and like really fucking good.
I would just randomly pick objects, like proper nouns, that I feel would perfectly represent. Like, final rating for this game, Lamborghini.
Just use cars.
No, not even just cars, but like, final rating for this game, juggling chainsaws. Final rating for this game, malfunctioning blender. Final rating for this game, excellent foot massage, but only on one foot.
See, I think that would just piss people off. Also, I don't think Metacritic would be able to average that in.
I have problems with Metacritic.
Metacritic has problems with you.
Oh, and this is where me, Metacritic, and a can of gasoline are going to work this out. Because I am going to need a lot of gas to drive to where Metacritic's offices are and give them a very reasonably worded letter about how sternly I feel of their aggregate rating system. Would you be a little more awake if I implied arson there?
I thought that was like the misdirection.
You're a misdirection.
It's got to the point now, Johnny, where when you threaten violence upon another man, Austin just falls asleep. It's just usual.
Yeah. I suppose so. What I should really start doing is threatening to hug people. I'll tell you, this game was so terrible, I just want to snuggle the creative director. I want to smear myself in butter and just crawl into bed with him. Plastic sheets. And just go for a tussle.
Excuse me?
I want to wrestle this PR rep in a giant kiddie pool filled with butterscotch pudding.
Do you guys think anyone would notice? Or do you think we would get in any trouble if we did a whole episode with no video game talk at all?
Or was anybody planning to talk about them?
Well, people would notice. I don't think that our listeners would necessarily mind, though. That's the difference. I think in the end, someone would probably say, wait a minute, they didn't talk about video games at all this week. Because I don't think anybody honestly sits down and listens to this podcast and goes, come on, get to the video games. Oh, God, so annoying.
My mind's still on the fact you want to get into a bed with a creative director covered in butter. I actually think that would be a really good incentive to make sure games never score below a 5. Fuck, made the game better, or that guy is going to come around again. You don't know what he did to me last
just
time.
Like at the end of the night, he's leaving the office. I'm just standing in the parking lot with a giant can of Crisco, just rubbing myself down.
See,
He'd definitely be putting in overtime.
see there was a comment on the last YouTube version of our podcast. Someone said half of your episodes are good. The question I have is that like half of the running time is good, or half of the whole episodes? Like episode 50 was good, but 51 was not. Like, is it?
Yeah, I was kind of curious about the defining factors in that too, because and what halves? Not just like half of what, like half of the episode, half of all the episodes, first half of our episodes, but like what half? Is it the half where we talk about video games? Is it the half before we actually start the podcast now? Is it the half of the podcast? Or is it the first half and not the half that we talk about video games? What half?
Or the first 25 episodes, the second 25 episodes?
Nobody knows except that guy. Talk to me, that guy!
Tell us your secrets.
Tell me, or I will have to rub myself down with Crisco and climb into some plastic sheets with you. Until you talk and tell me the truth. Crisco!
I assume that they were referring to the first half of the last episode when we flipped the fuck out, because that apparently was entertaining for people. And then I assume the rest of it is not entertaining for some people. So, I don't know. Or we can actually talk about video games ever now? Is this... I don't care either way.
I just wanted to throw a fly in the ointment and just say maybe it's half of the two main hosts. Maybe only one of you is liked.
Aww. Or just like the bottom half of Johnny and the top half of me.
There could be somebody out there who's trying to make the ultimate podcaster by taking my legs and your body and somehow managing to affix, I don't know, Jim Sterling's head to us.
You just come up with Photoshop opportunities, don't you? You just sit there and work them into the podcast just to make people make that picture and give me nightmares for them.
I most certainly do not intentionally come up with these things. Like the Shodanemu, which is still like the best thing that's ever come out of this show, was like entirely off the cuff.
That was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of Shodanemu.
Boom, transition, nailed it.
Did you guys hear that somebody got to the center of the Curiosity Cube?
I can't decide what my favorite part of the story is. There's so many parts of it that are amazing. I want to start with the fact that the guy who won only started playing an hour before it ended.
Yeah.
Is that my favorite? I'll say that is for now until the next part. That's awesome.
I loved, personally, my favorite were the statistics, where we learned how many cubes were actually in this. I think he said it was like 150 billion cubes.
Are we going with me now? My favourite, honestly, it was kind of close to Austin's, where the guy actually in the interview was like, I only played it for like an hour. I mean, how long has this thing been going on for? And they were like, yeah, like 6 months. He's like, why the fuck would anybody play this game for 6 months? Like, this is crap.
I'm not even done yet. They say, I think it was either 150 billion or 150 million. And then he was like, yeah, and 4 million individual downloads. I was like, what?
Well, there are at least 4 million idiots, or people with free time.
Well, it's not even that. It's that there was like 4 million people who downloaded it. And then, I mean, let's go ahead and be generous to the potential intelligence of people. Then say that it was 150 million cubes as opposed to 150 billion. I thought it was billion, but it might just be million. So that's 4 million people clicking away 150 million cubes. And the guy who won had been playing the game for an hour. Somebody out there is pissed.
He totally kill-stealed.
Totally.
I wonder how many of those layers were added on by people paying money to have them back on.
Not enough. Should have been more.
In the episode when we talked about this, like when it first happened, we were saying it'd be going on for like weeks, months maybe. It was like a whole year. Like it outstripped anything we thought it would be. So in a sense, it's actually really successful. But in another sense, it's some fucking bullshit. Because when you look at the numbers and when it launched, well, first of all, let's say what was inside the cube. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Johnny, do you want to what was inside the cube?
What was inside the cube was a video, in the first place, from Mr. Shodanemu himself, basically saying that, and I'm paraphrasing here, that when they made Curiosity, they hadn't really decided what was going to go inside the cube, and then when time started ticking down and they were like, holy shit, somebody might actually get to the center of this thing, they had to come up with an idea real quick. So 22 Can's next game, Geodude. Yep. which is supposed to be a god simulator, kind of in the vein of Peter Molyneux's classic, Shodanimu's classic, Populous. Apparently, they're super involved with that. The winner is, I believe his words were exactly that every time someone exchanges money or does something special in that world, that you get a slice of that pie, or you get a slice of that. It was vague. I don't know if that means that they're going to be doing profit sharing, which, if it is the case, is hardly as mind-blowing as Shodanimu was suggesting. And if it's not, well, if it's something like in-game based, it really depends on how successful Goddess is, doesn't it? So this uber mind-blowing participation role in this next game that 22 Cans is coming out with, it seems pretty reliant on a number of other factors falling into place. Like, for example, Goddess being successfully kickstarted.
Yeah.
Which it was. I mean, it was. For people who don't know, Goddess was a kickstarted game. It was successfully kickstarted, but it was kickstarted after Curiosity went up.
Yeah,
so,
14 days after, I think.
Yeah, so what if Goddess had failed at Kickstarter? Would there have been something else entirely in the cube? I'd imagine. Or would they have gone traditional funding routes and still tried to make that the thing inside the cube? Is this... I mean, this is kind of fraud for the Goddess Kickstarter, because the people who pledged money to that had no idea that some random guy would get control over it.
And we don't know if he's going to get control over it.
He's getting some kind of control, they said.
Yeah.
We don't know the extent of that. But if I had given money to Molyneux to make a God game, and then I found out he was letting someone else randomly do whatever they want in the hopes of sharing in the microtransaction money...
It is over, though. Curiosity the Cube is over now, and I guess we can kind of call it and say it was an experiment.
The same old Peter Molyneux, there's going to be something amazing. I haven't really come up with an idea. Here's an idea at the last minute. I probably haven't thought this one through either. I'll just put a dog in it or something.
I mean, what is there really to say? On one hand, I am kind of impressed that it wasn't a complete and total letdown. Like, I was expecting it just to be like a firm handshake or something. Just like...
Congratulations!
Yeah, just a total non-entity. I mean, he might get some money and he will be forever remembered. So, kind of cool, I guess. But the timing of it is super suspect. I don't know if there's any, actual legal ramifications of this, but... I mean, clearly it wasn't in place when Curiosity launched, so the whole thing was disingenuous from the start.
I've got a quick question for you.
Okay.
Are you sure he's going to be forever remembered? And if he is, what's his name?
Random teenager from the UK.
Brian Henderson.
Also, his favorite games are Dead Space 3, Assassin's Creed 3, and something else.
Halo,
yeah. They're all AAA shooters and action games. So yeah, he's super thrilled to be in the new God Sim only for PC.
Yeah.
Well, one of his first tweets was like, I really couldn't care for this. Will someone swap me for a car?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he's excited because he might make some money and he made the news, but he does not care about Goddess.
No. No, he doesn't. And you know what I think is amusing? I think this might be a little bit of a humble lesson for Peter Molyneux.
Really? He's going to be humbled by all the money he made?
No, not necessarily humbled by all the money he made, but I think it might just be, there might be a moment for him where he realizes who he's marketing to now.
I mean, the person who ended up winning was not the core Molyneux fan, but he did capture the attention of 4 million plus people. So I don't know. I don't feel like he cries himself to sleep at night now.
No, I'm not suggesting that he's going to feel like it's a failure. I think more than anything else, Molyneux is going to feel like it's a resounding success because, he did really make a game that boils down what it is that we do as gamers. We press buttons and things happen. And that's there's a lot of sort of weird ironic games that you can get on the internet, like Stat Builder. I don't know if you guys have seen Stat Builder.
No, but that sounds funny.
It's just like you press this button and it just your stats go up. And it's like, yeah, you made a level. Keep clicking. And you're like, click. Yeah, you made another level. You're like, yeah, leveling. And it's obviously an ironic examination of what it actually means to play to play video games. Like, I think let me put a quick link in the chat here. Here we go. This is Stat Builder right here. And so yeah, it's He did make a game out of that. He did. I don't think it would have sold as well if it wasn't free to play, obviously, but you gotta have some stones to walk into a press room and be like, this is my new game. You press the screen. Well, and then what? You press it again. And then you keep pressing it.
For me, the most impressive thing is that he's done this Kickstarter for Goddess. Got all these other people's money, made a game, and then go, this guy gets to make money out of all your donations. So this guy's now incentivized to make this game as loads of people point this out, as microtransaction full as possible. Like, The more he can make out of the game, the more money he gets. He has no investment. He's put no money towards this. Why the hell would he care if it's successful or not? Just try and milk the most out of it as possible. It's just a bad idea.
Yeah, I don't think it bodes well for the future of Goddess. I think that much is kind of obvious.
Actually, I need to find this guy, hunt him down, and just go, right, I want your direction for Goddess to be to walk up to Peter Molyneux and make Black and White 3.
I really don't want him to do that, though.
Really?
Just because I feel like the Black and White game's under-delivered. And as far as Dungeon Keeper goes, there's a Dungeon Keeper-styled game that Peter Molyneux has actually endorsed called War for the Overworld. You can get early access to it on Steam now. It looks like, what was the Dungeons? I played a game by Calypso Entertainment a couple of years ago. I reviewed it on the site called Dungeons. I was really hoping it was going to be like Dungeon Keeper, spiritual successor, but it wasn't. It was an interesting game in its own right, but not what I expected it to be, not what I wanted it to be, not what I had hoped for. But War for the Overworld pretty much looks like Dungeon Keeper 3. I would counsel you and any other fans of Dungeon Keeper 1 and 2 to have a look at War for the Overworld on Steam. You can buy into it on Steam for early access right now. And Peter Molyneux has full-on endorsed War for the Overworld. He's like, yeah, you know what? It's high time somebody made another Dungeon Keeper-styled game, and this is the one.
Fair enough. I'll have to check it out.
All right. So yeah,
it's not often we get that kind of thing.
It's true. They're few and far between these days, I find. But that was curiosity. No more shall we speak of it, except perhaps, ironically, some months hence, or not even ironically, possibly just derogatorily.
Until Curiosity 2, Revenge of Curiosity, the cat.
You may find something amazing in the box. You may not. At the end, it's just Peter Molyneux going, sorry! All right, so the next story that we have up, and we've talked, I think, the past few months about these folk in a reasonable amount, at least, because they, there were some profit problems they had, some under sales figures, restructuring of the company. I am talking about Square Enix. Now, Square Enix has befallen some tough times lately, and I say that with a little bit of temperance because it's difficult to acknowledge a company that sells millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of video games each year as falling on tough times. But it is true that their interior development has become a little more directionless lately. Would you guys say that it's fair to say that?
Yeah, I mean, they haven't quite had their core down.
I don't know if I'd say they're directionless. Their direction just sucks.
Okay, all right. So we can go ahead and say then that Square Enix internal development's direction blows. And there's, as I mentioned just a moment ago, there's been some hefty reconstruction in the company lately. The president has stepped down. and he still doesn't have another guy who's filled the shoes yet. But I believe they've got a guy in line.
I think so.
I'm asking for confirmation here, guys. You could jump in at any time with your vast knowledge of the video game industry and make me not look like a dick.
Why would I want to not make you look like a dick? That sounds like no fun at all.
Well, I mean, first of all, they had the Japanese president resign, and then the American CEO resigned. I don't know that they have new people for either of those positions. I think they have like interim people.
Okay, all right. So things are up in the air at Square Enix, I guess, is really the point that we're trying to get at right here. And they feel as though crowdsourcing might be a way to help them through this. Now, I think it's fair to say that people have kind of been expecting a AAA company to tap the crowdsourcing wellspring that's cropped up in the past year or so. I don't, I'm reticent to call it that because that makes it sound like it's a surging rush of real industry changing game, like real revolutionary move. And while I feel that it does change the balance on some levels, I feel that the X-Bone presentation that we just saw, and circulating rumors that Xbox is not going to allow indies to self-publish and whatnot, means that a lot of indie developers who are intending on using crowdsourcing are still probably going to be X-boned, excuse me, when it comes to actually getting their materials to the audience. But I haven't really been sure in the manner in which the first AAA publisher or AAA developer is going to want to use crowdsourcing or Kickstarter. And Square Enix, they haven't started a Kickstarter. They're not looking for your money yet, but they are talking about it. And I feel that is at least important. That there's a publisher out there that's acknowledging that this is a new way to interact with the audience. Because up until this point in time, it seems as though Kickstarter has been this kind of, it's the best way to bypass publisher and red tape corporate bullshit and and I've said on the podcast in the past that it's not really the best way to do that. However, it's a fantastic way to monetize an audience that you already have. But it's nice to see a company with vast gobs of cash talking about the interaction that crowdsourcing games affords developers with their audience.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not a revolutionary idea for a company to listen to their fans. This should have occurred to them probably earlier.
Because you can remember the last time that a large publisher really listened to their fans?
I mean, yeah, remember EA and the Mass Effect 3 thing. They listened, and they made that extended cut DLC.
That's true.
So, I mean, usually they only listen when it's angry. I mean, the idea of a huge AAA publisher using Kickstarter is, like, laughable on one level. Like, we all kind of joked about it when this was first happening. We're like, is Activision going to kickstart the next Call of Duty? Ha, 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 ha. It still is. I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon, especially because Kickstarter takes a sizable percentage. Like, if you raise the $20 million or whatever for your next Call of Duty, Kickstarter's taking $2 million of that probably.
Well, you do remember that Obsidian Entertainment confessed at one point in time that a large publisher, an unnamed publisher, approached them and said, yeah, we'd really like you to kickstart a game. And their proposal to the deal was that Obsidian Entertainment come up with the idea, they run the Kickstarter, they make the game, and then the publisher retain the rights to the intellectual property and make all the profit on sales. Like that.
I vaguely remember hearing about that story.
That was a thing.
Yeah. There have been things going on in, private emails between things. I don't know how much of that was, like, legitimately in motion. Like, what would have been the incentive for Obsidian to do that?
I think that is probably why they opted instead to just run their own Kickstarter.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any point in letting someone else take your profits if you're going to do all the work.
Well, it seemed to me at that point in time that there was probably a large misunderstanding about the value of Kickstarter to people who were sort of outside of the development aspect of the industry.
Oh, so you think big companies just thought, is that free money thing? Do some of that.
Yeah.
Bring us
yeah,
some of that.
Exactly. Like, I hear free-to-play makes a lot of money. We should have a free-to-play game.
Yeah.
And completely misunderstanding what it is that makes free-to-play, A, a great, like, genre to invest in, and B, actually profitable.
But, I mean, here's the thing. If Square was thinking about maybe making a lower budget game, or maybe as a localization project they don't think will get off the ground, using Kickstarter as like a pre-order system almost to basically evaluate the demand for something, I don't know how much I would hate that. Probably not that much.
See, I have a fundamental problem with Kickstarter as a whole thing in regards to when they go over their set target. And I mean, that's just one thing. But then again, right, you get someone like Double Fine that are making their game. They make the game, they give all the copies to the people that kickstarted it, and then they put the game on Steam for sale. Now they're going to make more profit off those sales. What's that profit going towards? Because it was other people that gave them the opportunity to make that profit. So they're getting free profit for nothing.
Well, I mean, it was still their hard work. I don't know if any kind of like profit sharing thing would be feasible in that situation. I see what you're saying, that that product wouldn't exist if it weren't for the investments that are not getting paid back. But
it just feels to me like it should be reinvested in something.
I mean, ideally.
But it is invariably going to be reinvested in something. I mean, it's going to be reinvested in the next game. Otherwise,
kickstart it again.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying, is that otherwise what you essentially have is a studio who keeps going back to Kickstarter, over and over and over again to start new games. And I know that,
or they don't have to lay off everybody in between games.
Yeah, almost. Now I know that In Exile Entertainment has already successfully kickstarted their second game before the first one is even finished. Now, company CEO Brian Fargo has said the reason why they decided to do that was because the team that was responsible for all the preliminary work on Wasteland 2 had finished all their work and was mapping out this new idea that they had for another game, and they were so excited about it and they were so stoked about it that they felt they just had to bring it to the crowdsourcing audience again and say, listen, this is what we want to do, and it got very successfully kickstarted, beyond, actually, the final value that Wasteland 2 clocked in at. I'm talking about Torment Tides of Numenera. But at this point in time, until we see something from them, kickstarting a third game at this point in time would be foolhardy.
Yep, that's the other thing from Kickstarter, is I've not seen any of the big names actually come through yet. Like, to go back to Double Fine again, they were the big one. They were the one that made the name. And even Wasteland 2, and neither of those games have come out yet, but there's Kickstarter after Kickstarter, and people are talking about it as the next big thing. It's like, wait, we haven't seen any results yet, guys. Like, shouldn't we wait to see whether this actually works before we all invest in it?
The thing is, I think what's going to wind up happening is we're going to wind up seeing studios hit the dirt way faster after basically a Kickstarter that releases a mediocre or disappointing product. Like, there's gonna be a point in time where people just go, wow, I can't believe I did that. This game isn't really that good at all. I am gonna think twice next time.
Well, that's the thing. To me, the market's gonna flop the second that happens. All it takes is one big name to ruin it, and then everybody's just going to pull out, because everybody's got this idea of it being a perfect thing in their head at the moment. They haven't been disappointed yet.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to the Square Enix comment, sorry, it was the final thing I saw on there, is the way I read what they were saying is less that we like Kickstarter and more that we quite like the idea of getting paid before we've made the game, while we're making the game, and then after we make the game. Is really good if we get lots of money at every stage. That's, if you read about what he's saying, that's actually how he's described it. I think that's how they perceive kickstarting, and considering their current financial practices, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they think it is.
Well, he doesn't just talk about Kickstarter. He also brings up Greenlight and the early access program that's started out on Steam, where games are being released in beta, and you can buy them and get access to them and play them as they get updated and so on and so on. But so yeah, it's not so much about necessarily crowdsourcing, as I said, but or as you said, but about changing the way, I think, that not only they communicate with the audience by allowing them early access to games and whatnot, but also by spreading out the collection of money during the process of developing. There's a quote that he has here. I'm sorry, when I say he, I'm talking about what's his name? Yosuke Matsuda, I think is how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Where he says, "We're no longer in an age where customers are left in the dark until a product is completed. We need to shift to a business model where we frequently interact with our customers for our products that are in development and or prior to being sold, have our customers understand games under development, and finally make sure that we develop games that meet their expectations." So he is to some extent talking about responsibility in design as well, because he also does say, in a model where a game is developed without customers knowing what it's like for many years, the product is presented to customers only after it has been finished, and all investment is recovered at one time. Customers are forced to wait too long, and opportunities for profits are passed up. That sounds pretty suspect to me. That it's that last sentence there, customers are forced to wait too long, and opportunities for profit are passed up. I don't like that.
What I was going to get at was it sounds a lot like the free-to-play concept where you end up spending more than a £40 game by spending it a little bit at a time. Because if you break it up, it doesn't look like so much, and you can ask for more for the same thing. That's what I think they might try and do, because what Square don't realise is there's no problem with they're necessarily their final product. Tomb Raider is still a great game. And we were happy to pay for that final product. It was their internal workings that actually were the problem.
Yeah, like we can say that it sold like 3.5 million copies, and that by no means is that a failure. That's a hit. The problem is that your projected sales were too high.
Yeah, and so they've obviously spent too much money making it. So surely it's all internal. It's not about the problem with the final product. I don't know. It sounds, I'm with you. It sounds suspect.
Well, I mean, that's basically what I was trying to say with a lot of this. It's not, Kickstarter isn't right for big publishers for most projects, and I don't think Square Enix is going to start one anytime soon. I think they are interested in the idea that they can get more money over a longer period of time. That's just automatically attractive to business types, and I good on them. That's capitalism for thinking about those options. But I would reiterate that I'm interested in the idea that they're like, the West would never buy enough copies of Final Fantasy Type 0 to justify its localization. So let's throw up a Kickstarter and see if it hits that number. Otherwise we just don't get it at all. So I think for something like that it could work, but not if they're going to try to do Final Fantasy 15. It's going to take $25 million or something. It's ludicrous, obviously.
Yeah, it seems like it's much more effective as a market for specialized audiences than it is for that blockbuster hit.
I think it would be pretty funny, though, if they did try to do that. If they said, Final Fantasy 15, $40 million, and they got like $20 or something, like it just like no one bid on it. Like that would be hilarious, and I would love to see their reaction. They probably wouldn't even have like a statement. They just pretend like it didn't happen. Because how do you face that?
See, I'd like to see them do like Final Fantasy VII remake, £400 million.
Oh yeah,
and just see whether it happens.
Yeah, I think if they did Final Fantasy VII remake, it would get funded regardless of the goal. I don't think there's any force in the universe could stop the internet from doing that.
I'd do it and then just do a reskin and release it and go,
Yeah, they would totally fucking do that too.
Yeah, it cost $40 million to have all these like beers while I was laughing at it.
It would give them, I think, a better idea of the actual market, because it seems to me that the problem is they don't actually have any idea how many people want their games. So if they threw up a project and then saw how many people pledged money on Kickstarter for it, then maybe they'd have a better idea of what they should be budgeting their games to what they should be shooting for.
It occurs to me that they should just speak to Sony, Microsoft, and Valve and find out what the projected sales on similar games actually are. Perhaps talking to the people that own the market would be a good idea.
It's true that I'm actually really pleased with somebody sitting down and talking about what the effects of crowdsourcing a particular game can actually have on the market in terms of what then becomes a viable project. I'm not so keen about the whole, monetizing the entire process of games development thing. That kind of makes me feel a little skeevy, but actually recognizing that engaging in a dialogue with your audience that isn't just for the most enthusiastic voices, be that proponents or haters, but for people who are actually willing to risk their day-to-day dollars to promote a project that you might feel unsure about. That is interesting, yeah.
Well, that brings up the sort of idea of Minecraft, doesn't it? That he kind of just put it out there and let people play it and develop it over time with feedback and then eventually monetize it and make a fortune. Maybe that kind of thing would be something to aim towards in the future. But trying to go for the Kickstarter thing is, I'm a bit skeptical of the whole thing.
Well, I suppose we'll only have to, sit around and wait and see whether or not this is just idle talk, or if they're actually going to pursue either a more open form of communication, or just go for the easy route and throw up a Kickstarter for Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah, I don't think that the last thing's going to happen. Can you imagine the backlash?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can also imagine how much money people would put down because they'd be saying, I fucking hate Square Enix, here's $50. It would happen. It would happen.
It already does, more or less.
I wonder if they would even be forthcoming with details. It would just say Final Fantasy 15 Kickstarter, here's the donate. It wouldn't even be they would lay out the concept art and the story and all the assets and stuff. It would just be money, please.
Everybody knows Final Fantasy fans are masochistic. It's just I know this game is rubbish. Just take my money and punish me. I mean, Square Enix don't know what they're doing with that series anyway, because we really, really wanted a remake of Final Fantasy X and then a third part of 13. We were just crying out for it.
Yeah, I'm saying, when testing the waters for products might be an idea, because I imagine if they threw up Kickstarters for Final Fantasy X Remake, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 14 relaunch, if they had put all those projects, against each other, the order would have been completely different. All the money would have went to the 7 Remake, and then 15, and then maybe the 14 relaunch, and then 10 Remake, and then 13.3. They're doing it backwards.
Couldn't you do that with a survey without taking people's money, though?
But this is what I'm talking about when I say about people who are actually potentially willing to risk, because talk is cheap. And, the internet proves that pretty much above anything else. People will buy games. They will pay money for games and then rage on these games. They'll buy Dead Space 3 and be like, oh my god, this is the worst game I've played since Dead Space 2, but I bought both of them.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's one thing to get angry forum goers, just spewing hate. If you got to pay to make your opinion known, you make your opinion count. Yeah,
there's no idle expenditure of dollars when it comes to what Final Fantasy game do you want to see the most? Then you find out the truth because I need to see how bad 13.3 is. Man, fuck that 7 shit. Yep. That's exactly what I was going to say too. So that's the story there. Nothing really tangible coming out of it yet, but I think it's interesting to look forward to see if major publishers will start crowdfunding, and if so, what are going to be the drawbacks and the possible positives of that, because I don't think it's quite so simple. It might just be idle talk as well. It might just be throw in a couple of buzzwords and somebody pays attention to us and thinks that, we have progressive ideas about the games industry. Now get back to work on Final Fantasy 13.3.
Game Freak, go on to Kickstarter. Start a project with only 3 Pokemon. For every million you pledge, we'll put another Pokemon in it. Well, Square did promise a new Final Fantasy at E3, so... No, they just begged us to look forward to it. So, please. Please be excited. Yeah, please be excited. You know, different context, and that sounds far worse.
So,
are we done yet?
Anybody been playing any games?
I played Resident Evil Revelations. My review's up on the site. Did you guys read that? Do we care? You want to talk about Resident Evil?
I didn't get a chance to read it, unfortunately. I was furniture shopping all weekend.
Oh, I had a quick chat about it with you a couple of days ago. It's exactly what I expected.
It's okay. I am of the opinion. I was thinking about writing just a full article on this. I might just get it out here. I'm of the opinion they should just burn Resident Evil to the ground and start over. The story is way too complicated. There are too many characters, too many plot twists, too many organizations. I want to be upset with them, but it's just funny. It's funny how convoluted the zombie series Resident Evil has become. And even the good Resident Evil games, like Revelations, is pretty good. Even that, it's just, it suffers every time it has to acknowledge that other games outside of it exist.
Yeah, but Austin, the bloated plot does mean that gamer girlfriends and boyfriends can now say things to each other like, hey baby, I want to put my umbrella in your tricell.
That barely makes any sense. It'd be one thing if they embraced the silly. If they're like, no, this is just, Suda-51 zombies. Like, if it was just silly. But they try to have their cake and eat it, too. Where there's like, oh, now we're going to stop for the hour-long comedy duo of these two characters in Revelations. It's like, look at their wacky shenanigans. Then it goes back to, like, the serious survival horror. I can't take it seriously.
You just want it to be burned to the ground and play The Adventures of Hunk. We all know you have a secret fetish for Hunk.
I would play the shit out of The Adventures of Hunk. But seriously, there's no reason they can't just start over. Actually, how I would do it, if I was Capcom, is have two series. You have the Resident Evil Horror series, which is a lower budget, kind of concentrated, Amnesia experience. And then you have the Resident Evil Action series, which is clearly
based on the movies by Paul W.S. Anderson.
Fuck it, why not, right? That's clearly what they want to do. That's what they wish they were doing. They think it can compete with Call of Duty. So if they want to make the big budget action Resident Evils, then do it. Just leave that away from the serious stuff, That's I would do it. That way you can have your stupid, bloated, silly shoot 'em up, and then you could have, like, the 10 people on the Resident Evil team who clearly want to make a horror game and let them do that.
Split into two games, one called Resident, one called Evil.
I don't know. That's just my thought on it. The series isn't irredeemable, but I feel like it's less work to just pretend none of that happened and start over than it would be to try to fix it.
Yeah, they've kind of dug themselves a hole. Although, to be fair, I lost attention to Resident Evil many years ago. I mean, I played 6, I played 5, I played some of 4, but there was a period there after Code Veronica where I was like, fuck it, I'm done.
I've played nigh on all of them, which is probably more than they deserve.
So you played the first-person shooter?
The Slant 6 one?
I don't even know.
I think it was third person.
Dead Aim.
No, there was a first-person shooter.
Oh, Dead Aim. I don't think I beat it. I might have played a little bit of it.
All right. Did you play the multiplayer PS2 title?
Yes, what was that? Outbreak. Yeah, I did play that. I was actually like a pretty big Resident Evil fan for a while. Like that might have been like a day one purchase for me back in the day.
So you played Operation Raccoon City?
Yeah.
Shit.
So you played Resident Evil 0?
Yep, I have that. It's like right there over on my shelf.
So you played the other one that came out for the GameCube?
There's 3 for the GameCube. There's 4, 0, and a remake of 1.
And they released
and there's
3. Yeah,
and there's Nemesis. There's a version of Nemesis on the GameCube too. So
it's worth quite a bit of money now as well.
I'm just saying, Resident Evil used to be a thing, and now it's too much thing for its own good.
I started losing it after 3.
4, I will defend 4 to the death. It is it's the closest they've got to blending the horror and the action, and it's pretty self-contained. Like, all you really miss, if that's the only one you played, you don't know the backstory of, like, Ada and Leon. Besides that, it's just like, here's a new strain of virus in a new area, new characters, new villain. Like, you're not bogged down by all of the weird, like, millions of conflicting motivations of all of the side characters. So I think that works in its favor.
I think we all agree that Resident Evil used to be a thing. We all used to like it, and then it just snubbed us.
Much like Silent Hill. Together, they've gone down.
Don't fucking mention Silent Hill.
they Thelma and Louised it together. So
Jeez.
that's one of the things I've been playing. I've played other things. What have I know there's... Oh,
Yourself.
I finished Disgaea 2. It's very good. You should play it, everyone.
Finally!
That's a long-ass game. It was for about 40 hours. I
know, I'm just messing with you.
It's very good. I don't know if you guys want to talk about it. I don't really have that much more to say about it. That doesn't, like, minutia, so I don't think either of you have played it. So
I played it through.
Oh, you have? Did you
Yeah.
Did you see the uncensored Japanese ending?
No.
It's so fucked up. It's so fucked up.
I know what I'm doing after the podcast.
What else? Oh, I played Adventure Time. Hey, Ice King, why did you steal our garbage? That is the whole name of the game.
Yeah.
Are you guys fans of Adventure Time? Have you ever seen the show or played the game?
I've seen a couple episodes of the show.
I've only seen the bacon pancakes thing that somebody stuck in my head.
I really like Adventure Time. When I watched it, because I just put up like a season on Netflix, and I was like, I'll just check it out. I'm sure it's okay. It's really good, like better than I was expecting. And the game captures a lot of like the humor and the charm and stuff. But it's not a very good game. It's like 4 hours long and way too easy, and it's mostly backtracking. But it's funny and it's cute and it has really good music. That's really the best. If I was reviewing it, I definitely only give it a for fans only recommendation. But you should at least look at the article that Robert did on its soundtrack, because that's easily the best part of it. The music is really funny. Yeah, I like Adventure Time. I don't watch much TV anymore, but luckily for me, like the only children's TV shows I've tried to watch recently have been really good: Avatar and Adventure Time. So there's hope for the next generation. I think that's everything I've been playing. You guys been playing anything?
I had a pretty slim week for playing video games, actually. But I did, at your behest, Austin, I managed to get in about an hour of Analog: A Hate Story after last week's episode.
Mm-hmm.
I got to play that for an hour. It's really well written. You're right. Even just an hour in, I found it really inaccessible at first, because of how Asian it was.
How Asian? Oh, yeah, all the Korean names?
Yeah, all the Korean names, and
yeah.
It took me a second to basically reset my brain and be like, okay, all right, let's differentiate these families and see like who I'm talking about who here and what's what and everything, and just like the way that the AIs are characterized as well somewhat bothered me, because I went in with this like very Western like standpoint, this very, very Western viewpoint, where when I'm conversing with a computer, I expect it to be a computer and not to be all like kawaii desu. I'm so lonely here. I'm like, you're a fucking computer. Shut up. It's so that took me a little while to get past. I don't think I was quite expecting it to be. I have things to say about it, but they're all spoilers, so you need to hurry up and finish it, because I have direct responses to everything you're saying. Okay, that's fine. I'll get to it. I'm only saying that it took me a little while. It took me a few minutes. Like, it took me maybe 20 or 30 minutes to get over that, and actually, because once you start, the first thing that I want to say is that I don't honestly feel like the interface is that much of an obstacle. Where you have to type things? Yeah, I really don't, because it doesn't even seem like it's too that major a part of the game. Yeah, it's only a couple sequences. Yeah, and even then, it's pretty, like, it's spelled out for you pretty clearly. Yep. So yeah, I don't think that's a huge obstacle in terms of enjoying the game. Because, again, obviously, if you're going in to do a visual novel, you are going in to do a visual novel, and most of the game is obviously reading, and if you're okay with that, I think you'll enjoy it greatly. But, yeah, after about the 20-minute mark, when I started coming to grips with the situation and actually sort of forming my own opinion about, okay, all right, this character, I know this character, and this character, and this character, and this character, I started to allow myself to enjoy it more. I find that I'm much more forgiving of inconsistencies in the way a game is presented if I can lose myself in the lore or the world. So my problems with the way that the AI presented themselves sort of fell to the side, and I was just kind of like, all right, leave it alone, like we're reading here, just let it happen. Because I was enjoying the writing, I was enjoying the setup, I was enjoying a lot about it. So I was definitely much more forgiving of some of the idiosyncrasies about some of the characterization. And then I accidentally quit out of it without saving, so...
Wow.
Well, the problem is that it was, I was viewing the whole thing as being a computer terminal. So I was like, clicking around and moving back and forth and being like, okay, main menu. And then it went back to the main menu. And I was like, oh, shit. I didn't want to come back to this main menu, the other main menu.
Nice.
So yeah, that was I was a little wrapped up in the interface and just expected it to do what I thought it was going to do, and then it quit the game, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right.
That's unfortunate, but I think it does say a little bit about that you were into it,
I was quite into it and even at the end of the hour, I think I only played it for an hour, maybe an hour and a half tops, but the way that the story gets unfolded to you, it's a really she manages her reveals exceptionally well.
Yeah, I talked about this before. It's like even if you see them coming, it doesn't diminish the impact of them happening because it's told in such a way is that it just makes it more tense.
Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting postmodern examination of past attitudes towards women as well. Mm-hmm. I think so. I
think it's deliberately constructed in such a way as to be disorienting at first. It's like you get thrown into, this intergenerational, interfamily conflicts, and you have no frame of reference, and you kind of feel like you're drowning in all, and then it slowly comes together. I don't feel like your sense of, what's going on? I don't know any of these names. They all sound the same. My American brain is melting, or your Canadian brain. I think that's the intended effect.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think it directly ties into, of course, as you would be familiar with the situations that one of the characters finds herself in.
Yep.
So I like there's a tonal consistency in the way that the story is told to you and what's happening to this one particular character. So and I look forward to going back to it.
I will say that the other thing about the AIs will make perfect sense.
Well, I've already moved from one to the other.
Uh-huh.
So I'm aware of the fact that spoilers.
Actually, what I was thinking, because last couple of episodes we've gotten in trouble with spoiling things.
Uh-huh.
When you finish the game, presumably next week, we'll just have a spoiler-filled ending conversation. We'll push all the spoilers to the end, and then we'll have a section where we'll be like, stop listening right now, and then that way no one will get spoiled.
Okay, then that works. That works. No spoilers. Spoilers averted.
But yeah, I think I know what you're going to say anyway, so.
Okay, all right. And apart from that, I played a little bit more SimCity. Still enjoying that. But, I don't know. I do not like the fact that the cities are so small. I feel like... No, because seriously, because the way it is that you sort of a region, and then this region has, several cities in it, and you're supposed to, specialize each city so that, this one makes coal, and this one's a big garbage dump, and this one has strippers and gambling, and blah, 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 right? But, it didn't take me that long to fill up my city area, and I realized that there's still economic growth, and that it's not like, I can have more people and larger residences and more income, but I kind of feel that I've reached this point in time where I'm sort of like, now what else do I do in this city? I guess wait for it to grow, and then when they have a problem, I deal with it. And that's not great, because it does make me feel like I'm, it makes me feel like I'm a troubleshooter rather than a mayor, where I can be like, oh, I want to expand over here. Oh, we need more jobs, then I'm going to do that. Oh, we need more this. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm just sort of sitting there going, okay, there was a fire, so I guess I'll bulldoze the rubble.
You're being reactive instead of proactive?
Yeah, this particular city, and then the only other option that I have is to just sort of jump from that one to another city in the region and then start from scratch again. And that's kind of I've been playing for a few hours, and you're telling me that I've already maxed out my, like, this area. There's no more to do here except just solve people's little problems. Oh no, we need more rooms at the hospital. Okay, well, I'll put a floor on the hospital. Boom, done. Now I'll just wait for the next person to have a problem and deal with that. Oh no, we need another fire truck. Okay, boom, there we go, done. Oh no, your water table is running out. Okay, well, I'll move the water pump from here to over here. So it doesn't feel like I'm growing my city anymore so much as just engaging in busy work now. And, the solution being, okay, well, build up the region. Or get your friends to build up the region. I got, 2 friends that play SimCity. That's my buddy James and my buddy Matt. And James is done with it. He's finished playing with SimCity. He reviewed it back when it came out, so... And then Matt's a busy guy. And even then, when we're playing, we're not really playing together. We're playing in, 2 different cities... And we can kind of, look at each other in the distance and then idly chat while we're planning roads. I'm still struggling to see the multiplayer aspect of this game. It doesn't exist. And, they didn't really... It occurs to me that they didn't really consider the long game. It doesn't allow you to be experimental either, which bothers me. About SimCity, like a SimCity game, because it occurs to me that you should really be able to do super weird, quirky, strange things with your city and see what works. But you can't save it, try something experimental, and then completely fuck it up, and then have a tornado come through and ravage your city and be like, whoa, all right, and then load it again. You can't play the SimCity 2000 of old where you build up this giant metropolis over the course of days and days and days that takes up every tile on the map, and then just drop a dozen disasters on it all at once just to see the place burn to the ground, and then load your game. You can't do that.
It forces you to be too serious about the whole thing.
It does, and that seems so strange for not only a SimCity game, but for now SimCity is sort of inexorably tied to The Sims as well. Because you can even do that with The Sims. You can save your game and then, wall somebody up, cask of Amontillado style, and then just let them piss themselves and starve to death. And then load your game if you were really, really attached to that baby. But you can't do it with SimCity. It forces you to make choices. And if you want your city to succeed, and if you're playing with a friend, and your friend really banks on this coal mining city that you have, you can't just be like, earthquake, haha, fuck all y'all. Because you're not just messing with yourself anymore. You're messing with anybody that you're connected to as well. And that
sound all that fun.
It seems counterintuitive for a SimCity game. I'm not sure they completely got why people like to have city planners in the first place. And that's because you essentially have a playground. You can do whatever you want. You could build up your futuristic solar wind-powered utopia that, people live in arcologies and, crazy self-contained, super amazing, gardening utopias. But then the very next minute, you can be like, fucking Godzilla. And you don't have to necessarily reap the consequences of that, but you can mess around with the game in a way that you sort of feel like you want to. Whereas SimCity sets these goals for you where it's kind of like, oh, you need more residential, oh, you need more industrial, oh, you need commercial, oh, you need more residential, oh, you need more of this, more of this, more of this, more, and you're constantly trying to battle these needs and wants of the city to try and maximize your growth output. And at any point in time where you feel just like doing something fucking goofy, it totally throws off everything. So, I don't know. I'm still kind of having fun with it, but I don't know how much there is left in the game for me.
It definitely sounds like you're on a downer from it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much longer I'm gonna be enjoying it. So, that was really all I had to play this week, actually. So, what about you, Yusuf?
I got quite a bit in, and it all started when I decided Austin was a prick because he put on Twitter that. Why does anybody play any action games other than Platinum games anymore? And I was like, screw you, Austin. And I went through my entire games collection and then ended up sitting down playing Metal Gear Rising and feeling very stupid. So I played through a load of action games. And the only one I can think of that might possibly be allowed to get into the category is the one I played a lot of, which is the Batman Arkham games, which I technically count as the action games, but they're not quite in the same vein as Platinum games.
There's so much confusion over that comment. Like, people were trying to bring up, just because you push a button and someone swings a sword does not make it a Platinum-style action game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know what you're saying. And the only one that even got close was Azura's Wrath, and that was probably that anyway.
Azura's Wrath is a pretty good anime that occasionally tries to be a video game.
It does do that. Yeah, anyway, you were completely right, and I apologize for hating you, but not telling you I hate you. So I played a lot of Batman Arkham Asylum. I think I got all the achievements on the PC version, and now I'm playing through City. Yeah, I did it. I got all the trophies on the PS3, and I thought my Windows Live account was feeling unloved. So now I'm playing through City because I've got a lovely PC, and Arkham City looks amazing on maximum settings.
It really does.
Yeah, it looks wicked. And then played, obviously, Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D, which is Donkey Kong Country Returns, a bit on a handheld. And it's just not as good as playing it on a TV. And read the review, I go on in more detail. And apart from that, I'm sorry, Johnny, I played Fire Emblem. I was hoping I could come into this podcast and be the one person that isn't going to talk with Austin about Fire Emblem. But,
I'll say it for him. Who did you marry?
I haven't got that far.
Damn it, Yusuf! You should have waited to come on here. That's the fee for getting on this podcast, is talking about Fire Emblem, and specifically your marriage situation.
Well, I decided I was a pro, so it's the first Fire Emblem I've ever played, and I'm like, permadeath, hard mode, and I'm like, oh shit.
You done fucked up now.
I'm like, I'm 5 hours into this game, I ain't fucking starting again. So, yeah, I'm playing the DLC map a couple of times to like level my people up, because I'm cheeky like that. Because as like everybody who plays the game for the first time, you just go, Frederick, he can take every hit in the game, so I'm just going to throw him at enemies. Shit, all my other people are rubbish. Yeah,
and then 12 chapters in, you realize Frederick's the only one in your entire army who's worth using, and you fucked yourself.
Yeah, you just plant him in the middle of a canyon and hope nothing gets through.
I knew, because I mean, it's a Fire Emblem, cliche at this point that you always get that one character. So as soon as I recognized that Frederick was that guy, I benched his ass, because he's just a black hole for your experience points. You want him as far away from the enemies as possible.
I'm playing on hard mode, and so it's kicking my ass if I don't use it.
You have to use him on the lunatic difficulty. Like, I don't think it's mathematically possible to win the first couple maps without him. So that
it's just depressing. Like having some of the characters. I can't even pronounce his name, but the guy that's got a really high critical percent rate, and has a really good dodge. Long Q or whatever his name.
Long Q.
Yeah. And just watching him like fail to dodge once, and you're like, my whole game is over, and I have to start again. It's soul destroying. It really is. But I keep playing it.
Very good.
It is really good. And I don't think I need to tell anybody to go out there and buy it, because you do this every week. I played a little bit more Luigi's Mansion.
Dark Moon for the 3DS, I assume, not the original.
Yeah. I didn't like the GameCube one, but I really like the 3DS one.
The GameCube one shouldn't be fun, but it is. It's like it's fun despite itself.
See, it's one of those games that I remember everybody at the time when the GameCube came out was like, this game's freaking rubbish, I hate this game. And then it kind of like became hipster popular.
Yeah, it has a cult following.
Yeah. And I tried playing it again going, was I wrong? Was this game good? No, it's fucking rubbish. What are you wankers all talking about? Yeah. And I played like half an hour of Soul Sacrifice.
What do you think of Soul Sacrifice? I tried to sell Taylor on it. His vagina got all sandy.
It didn't really do it for me in the half an hour I played. It was just a book talking at me with bad voice acting.
I love the book. You're only half an hour in. You haven't gotten past like the introduction, so.
No, I hit things in a kind of Monster Hunter style. I don't like Monster Hunter. which is the other thing I got. I played more Monster Hunter than I've ever played in the last week, which was I got through the intro video on the Wii U. And then I realised the character I'd created, no matter what you do with him, he looks super gay. So there is no way to make a non-gay looking character at the beginning of Monster Hunter. It's like, how can I wear the most tight leather pants possible?
See, that's when I go to character creation, I purposely try to create the most flamboyant character possible. So that's a plus for me.
To answer your question, Yusuf, Crisco gets you into those leather pants like nobody's business.
And we come full circle. I assume that flamboyancy is a tactic against the monsters if you go out there and dazzle them with your fabulousness.
It works for me.
Yeah. I think that's everything I've been playing. I've been trying to play through things that I know I should finish, and then playing games I've already finished instead. It's one of those annoying situations while I wait for the inevitable rush of games in June, and then patient wait through E3 going, what gamers they're going to make me wait to spend my money on now.
I can't wait for E3 to be over.
I mean, what have we got in that period? You've got Remember Me, Last of Us, Animal Crossing, Company Heroes 2, and then there's something at the end of June as well, isn't there?
I think Project Cross Zone.
Oh yeah, there's a demo out for that. I haven't downloaded that.
NCAA, the new football.
Because everybody cares about that.
I do.
That doesn't even come out over here.
Oh, you guys are missing out.
We don't get Madden anymore.
You don't get Madden at all?
No, I haven't seen it for years.
What? We get you guys' stupid sports.
You like FIFA, so don't pretend that you hate.
I do like FIFA. We don't get Cricket Simulator though.
Are you looking forward to being able to look at your fantasy football league while you play FIFA?
I don't even want to.
I wasn't here for your age the first time. I thought it'd be
Microsoft's enthusiasm for sports has put me off of sports. Like, I like sports, and after seeing that, I'm just like, I'm ashamed of myself and everyone I know.
Yeah, but now you can have sports on the TV and then snap on a forum so you can complain about sports at the same time.
Let's not go down that road. I know people probably want to listen to me flip out, but...
I heard you like sports. Now you can put your sports in your sports and have your sports at the same time. Yeah. Sports!
People could play Final Fantasy 15 and then kickstart Final Fantasy 16 at the same time.
It's the future.
We could do the podcast while watching Star Trek.
You could download this podcast while listening to a better one.
Which might be last week's better one, actually. Because, I mean, if this is maybe half of the podcast that's no good, maybe last week's was good, so you can listen to last week's and this week's.
No, last week was The Matrix. This week is The Matrix Revolution, or whatever the second one was.
Reloaded.
Yeah, that's what this is. It's a sad, low energy, just terrible one.
The Tired Old Men podcast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just there was a lot of news today, and no one's playing much of anything, so.
Well, all the review copies have dried up before E3 because
I'm going to play Stat Builder right now.
The only thing I am going to do is watch the London Symphony Orchestra go play music from Final Fantasy 6, 7, and 10 for some reason.
Because those are the tolerable ones?
Yeah, but why 6, 7, 10? It's again, Square Enix seems to have got confused here. I'm pretty sure the music from 9 was better than 10. Just jam it in there. So I'm looking forward to that. And then the Last of Us demo comes out on the same day. It's in for this month, and then E3, and we can all wait for it to be over. E3 is become a chore.
It is such a pain in the ass. It's not
Let's
fun.
see some games.
I don't know.
Okay.
How many actual game reveals are any given E3? Like a couple, and they usually come out before the actual conference starts.
Yeah.
So, I'm not holding my breath for anything. We're going to get the new Smash Brothers before that. We're going to get the...
They've surely got... because there's the Nintendo Direct. They've already promised there was going to be a playable Mario game at E3.
They said playable Mario Kart, Mario 3D Universe, and Smash Bros.
See, that's the thing, is that you've got Microsoft and Sony doing whatever they're doing, and Nintendo are just going to turn up there and go, I've got a Mario and a Zelda game, and everybody's going to lose their fucking minds.
Yeah, if I'm on the floor and there are two equal lines, one to see the Xbox One and one to play Smash Brothers 4, I'm in the Smash Brothers line.
It doesn't even matter if it's the PS4 and the best game they've got. It's just like, there's Watch Dogs, and then there's the new Mario game. I'm like, Watch Dogs sounds interesting, but there's a fucking Mario game over there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I can jump over shit, and there might be a dinosaur in it this time. I'm sold.
Pretty much.
It's the thing with Nintendo, you always know the game's going to be 9 or 10 out of 10.
Except for Star Fox. Star Fox is the one series that they have no problems fucking up.
Oh, you don't want another Star Fox adventure?
I do not want a Star Fox anything but 64 style. Dear Jonathan, I write you today to ask you to end this podcast.
Austin, it was good to hear your voice when I was reading the letter that you read to me over the podcast. I have heard of this brand new endeavor called the Internet, where many information will be passed between common people and folk of good decency at a rate which not even the Pony Express can match. Perhaps I will see you there one day and show you the cotton I have farmed in my backyard.
With the employees you paid.
A fair wage.
Right after you covered yourself in butter.
And America was happy ever after. It's the end.
So, who wants to grease up in Crisco and go wrestling in plastic sheets?